Welcome to episode 224 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Cam.
Glad to join you.
We're Bear of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic. It was a very exciting past week in Magic. Spoiler season is upon us for Strixhaven School of Mages. We had the Kaldheim Championship. Tons to talk about. Lots of new cards to run through.
Yeah, we were going to do an episode, like we normally do, record at the end of last week, have it out on Friday or Saturday, but we both ended up being busy, which ended up working out pretty well. Our disorganized style paying off again, because all of the huge things that we're going to talk about today happened after we would have recorded.
Exactly.
So now we have a bunch of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, tons to run through. Of course, before we start, got to shout out our sponsor, wizardtower.com. Check them out for all your Magic single needs. New pre-orders for Strixhaven, I believe, are up on their website, so you can go check that out right now if you want to start pre-ordering some stuff from the new set. We saw the preview stream for Strixhaven happen last week. Saw a bunch of new cards, new mechanics. We're going to run through all of that stuff. But before we do, we're going to talk a little bit about the Kaldheim Championship. Taken down by Arnie Huschenbeth, playing Orzhov Auras in Historic and Dimir Rogues in Standard. Now, Dimir Rogues, the top 8 was Standard. So I think we can focus a little bit more on Standard here when we're discussing this deck. But I don't think Dimir Rogues was really considered one of the top decks in the format going into this past weekend. And I think looking at the metagame breakdown, it definitely wasn't among the top archetypes. I guess it was 5th most played, 8.1% of the metagame, 17 people brought it. But really, the vast majority of the metagame was Sultai Ultimatum, Teamer Adventures, and Mono Red Aggro.
Yeah, that's kind of how I imagined Rogue's place in the metagame was. Like, off on the side, like, it was doing okay. Some people would still play it, but not popular enough to really get a breakthrough. But we've been saying for a long time that these sort of tempo-style decks with counterspells like Rogues are play really well against the Ultimatum strategies in the format. And with Sultai Ultimatum being very popular, 3 of them in the top 8, Rogues is going to have a good matchup there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know how the Teamer Adventures versus Rogues matchup goes, but there are draws in the Teamer Adventure deck that tries to do similarly huge things with Alrund's Epiphany, so you're going to play against those the same way or just as well as you play against Ultimatums. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that one made it into top 8 and ended up taking down the whole thing doesn't surprise me too much.
Yeah, looking at his record across the tournament, it looks like he went X2 in Standard, so really good finish. X2 in Standard, X1 in Historic. Playing, like I mentioned, Orzhov Auras. Now, Auras was definitely one of the more popular decks in Historic. I think it was, second most played, 14.7% of the metagame. Jund's Sacrifice variants taking up the vast majority of the field, combining for 31.3%. That, of course, being broken into Jund Food and Jund Company. Jund Food being the majority of that, 26.5%, and 4.7% being Jund Company. I mean, this is just kind of the story of Historic, though, right? Like, when we talked about the Historic Anthology 1 episode ago, 2 weeks ago, we ran through all the cards, and I think our general consensus for everything was that we didn't think any card really was going to have that big of an effect on Historic, and that the Jund Sacrifice variants were just going to continue to dominate. And
I mean, that seems to be what happened. There were really no new cards that made any waves. The cycling deck was playing, there was a red-white cycling deck in the top 8 for Historic, which was playing Flame Blade Adept.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like, the Death Shadow deck that, we were all sort of crossing our fingers would make a breakthrough, couldn't do it. Either, I don't know, maybe people didn't try, or maybe it's just not there. But yeah, Jund Food still on its throne. Black-White Auras was a known thing, I guess. I haven't been paying too much attention to. I didn't get a chance to watch any of the coverage. I was a bit busy, but I guess people sort of figured out and agreed that it has an all right Jund food matchup, which would be why so many people brought it. You'd have to think that in order to bring it into a meta of so much Jund food.
Yeah. We
But
did have,
like that's just picking good matchups from known decks. There's nothing like crazy happening here.
no, exactly. There was one new deck that I guess you could say broke out this weekend, which was Abs and Midrange that a lot of the CFB guys brought. And I think looking at this list, this to me looks like a deck that is hard targeting Jund. And I think in a metagame where Jund is as prevalent as it is, this deck is obviously a great choice. But I think if the format shakes up and Jund loses a lot of its metagame share come Strixhaven, I think this deck is probably a bit of a trap. But have you had a chance to look at this deck?
Looking at it now, I mean, the 4 Yasharn's main definitely do have Jund food written on them.
4 Yasharn, 4 Knight of Autumn, 2 Kaya Orzhov Usurper. I mean, this is just you do not lose to Jund with this deck. But
yeah, and I mean, that's a very reasonable thing to try and do based on the info that, all these players had a week prior to this tournament, looking at the SCG, which was just overrun with Jund food.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I mean, we all know by now how great Yasharn is in the Jund matchup, but I think, I mean, that isn't a secret. All the Jund players are coming to the table knowing that people are coming with multiple Yasharns to fight them. So they're equipped with the answers, but these Abzan decks are going above and beyond with problemsome permanence for Jund to deal with. So I do like this deck in Historic currently. I guess only time will tell if it can hold up if Jund loses any power at all. I know a lot of people have been pushing for Jund to lose one of its pieces, maybe Cauldron Familiar or something like that, to shake up the format a bit. But I don't imagine that WotC's going to touch this format until after Strixhaven.
You mentioned doing something to shake up Historic. I feel like if WotC was going to do anything to shake up Historic, it wouldn't be removing cards, I just have this inkling of a thought that maybe it would be adding cards.
Well, you see, Cam, they have a history of adding cards that don't actually do much to the format, right? In particular, this last Historic Anthology, which actually just didn't do anything, right?
Yeah, but hear me out. There's finitely many Magic cards that exist. So as long as you add cards to Historic faster than you design new cards, at some point you have to add cards that'll make a difference.
I mean, we'll get there, but basically, I think it's not really worth our time to spend too much time talking about the Kaldheim Championship because we have a new set coming out in a couple weeks. So we can't actually add much value to anyone who's playing these formats right now. Standard's figured out. People know what's going on. Historic, it's just Jund. That's all it is. Just play Jund.
Yeah, Jund and decks targeting Jund.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what we can talk about in regards to this is how unfortunate it is that this tournament isn't held 1 week or 2 weeks after release. Because
why is it so late?
I know, like they shifted to this different time slot a couple of years ago, right? With the PTs and the Mythic Championships, where it was always week 2 of the after a set release when they would have a Pro Tour. And I don't know about you, but I was always way more excited to watch that event when it was early because the formats weren't figured out. Anything, it still felt like anything was possible. And now, being so late, it's just not exciting.
Yeah, I agreed with them changing the timing of it when they changed the timing. So, yeah, it used to be like, as you said, week 2 after a format, there'd be a Pro Tour, and you'd, play like 1 or 2 FNMs with some new cards, and you'd watch the Pro Tour, and then people would mostly adopt Pro Tour decks and tune from there. And the reasoning at the time was, it's like they didn't like how they felt that the Pro Tour defined the metagame so soon in a standard set's life cycle. So they wanted to delay it to allow more time for brewing, more time for sort of natural development before the Pro Tour like made that really sort of cemented things into place. And at the time when it was mostly paper events and the coverage you would watch was maybe 1 or 2 GPs over 2 weeks, I think that was fine. But as arenas picked up in popularity and as we've seen from like the current state of Magic, metagames get solved in like a few weeks anyway, just from all the online tournaments, from people playing on ladder, from people posting on Twitter, from all these deck aggregating websites. And the last few like Pro Tour style events have just been what we know. It's just been known metagames playing against each other. It just looks like, you know, a day at the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
So their reasoning doesn't hold up anymore. And so it doesn't make sense for me to keep it where it is if they want to have an exciting tournament.
Exactly. It's it's just not the same when it's so late. And I'd much rather see it early on. So, you know, there's just so much more hype around it. People don't know what's going to show up. The metagame shifts so much now with Arena in the first like 3 to 4 weeks of a new set being released that I don't even think it'd be fair to say that the Pro Tour would define the metagame anymore, because things just churn so much in those first couple of weeks with the amount of games being played on Arena, right? Like it's
exactly. Like the beginning of this format, there was that time when everyone thought that Blue-Red Goldspan was going to be one of the best decks in the format, that it was going to stick around. It seemed so powerful. Like, if the Pro Tour was early and some new deck won the Pro Tour, people would have probably a similar conception of it. Like, oh, it's so strong, it's going to define the format. And it could phase out just the same.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's something they could reasonably do with how the schedule is set out for the year, if they could actually just change the dates to be earlier, because they use a lot of the beginning of the season now to qualify players for the next championship, right? So I don't know if it's as easy as just switching the date anymore, but I really wish they would. It'd be a lot greater for a viewer experience.
Maybe they'd take a little period of time to roll over into the new format or new schedule once they decide to go back. But anyway, it would be nice.
Yeah, there's not much else to talk about when it comes to this tournament, so we can just move on to the exciting stuff, which is Strixhaven School of Mages. New set released April 23rd. It's coming very soon. We've got a whole bunch of details about the new set. We've got a whole bunch of spoilers to talk about, new mechanics, and let's just hop right into it. So, new mechanics.
We're going to school.
We're going to school.
We're going to magic school. You know, students who go to school in real life, they have to worry about finding money to buy textbooks. Magic players going to school have to worry about finding money to buy all these text boxes.
Gee, do you have that one written down? You plan that one out?
What? No, I thought of it at the beginning of the episode, and I worked it in.
Okay. So, Strixhaven School of Mages, multicolored set based around 5 colleges in Strixhaven, all enemy-colored pairs. I imagine we're still going to just refer to these colleges as their Ravnica Guild counterparts. Because
it's definitely the Boros College.
Yeah.
I'm not going to Lorehold School. I'm going to Boros School.
So I'll do my best to refer to them as their actual names, but I don't think I'll be able to fix that in my brain anytime soon. But regardless, let's talk a little bit about the new mechanics for the new set. The first being Learn. So Learn is a mechanic that reads... it's a text that's attached onto various creatures, instants, sorceries, whatever. And it says, Learn, you may reveal a lesson card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand, or discard a card to draw a card. So an example of this would be First Day of Class. It's a 2-mana instant, costs 1 and a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. Learn. So you get that first ability, and then you Learn, which allows you to go to your sideboard, reveal a lesson card, and put it into your hand Or if you don't have a lesson card to go get, you can rummage. Now, when it comes to lesson cards, so far, I don't think there's any instant lesson cards. I think I've only seen sorceries. Can you confirm that?
Let me
I don't know if
see
you've
what Spryfall has to say.
But anyway, our lesson cards so far, it looks like they're only sorceries. An example of a lesson I have right here is Reduced to Memory. It costs 3 mana. It costs 1 white, sorcery, lesson. Exile target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So I've seen some uncommon lessons, some common lessons. There's a rare lesson. So I imagine they're just going to be across all rarities. Haven't seen any mythic lesson cards yet. So not sure if there will be any of those.
They're all sorceries so far.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume that they're all sorceries. What do you think about this mechanic?
I think, so it worries me a bit in that one of the complaints people have had about sort of the style of Magic gameplay recently has been the consistency and similarity, or the similarity in games coming from consistency of decks. The fact that like a lot of the blue-green cards we played with for the last little while all cantripped meant that those decks sort of always did the same thing every game. The London Mulligan also adds to this, especially in constructed formats. Sort of, your decks can always kind of function, always sort of do the same thing. And so it led to some repetitive gameplay. This type of tutor effect just inherently will lead to that as well, because, I can now play effectively more than 4 copies of some lesson card because I play 8 things with learn, or however many, and all of them can go get my first copy of whatever my first lesson I want to get is. So in the case that there's some lesson that is like good enough to see play, you just put 2 to 4 of them in your sideboard, and you're basically guaranteed to have 2 of them every game you play. So my worry is that it's going to lead to more of this repetitive gameplay pattern.
Yeah.
The other side, though, is that if they're all sort of silver bullet, then maybe it could lead to like game ones feeling a bit more like post board. You can go get some silver bullets for whatever matchup you happen to find yourself in, so you don't have maybe matchups that are so bad game one. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that like the potential to grant so much consistency has me worried. But again, that depends on the specific lessons they print and the specific cards that have learn. So it's going to take actually playing with it to find out.
Yeah, I haven't seen any cards in particular so far with either of those keywords that jump out to me as scary. Like, we've seen a couple of the rare lessons so far, one being Confront the Past. It costs black X. Choose one, return target planeswalker card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or remove twice X loyalty counters from target planeswalker an opponent controls. Like, this is just a pretty fair sorcery speed removal spell. There's also a white one, which is rare, called Academic Probation. Costs 2 mana, 1 and a white. Choose one. Choose a non-land card name. Opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name until your next turn. Or choose target non-land permanents. Until your next turn, it can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So, I mean, if this is kind of the power level for the rare lessons, I feel pretty safe about it. Like,
yeah, if they keep them very silver bullet, then I'm not too worried about them in constructed.
yeah.
What I am interested, or another interesting thing about the lessons, though, is that there are some completely colorless lessons. Like Introduction to Prophecy just costs 3 colorless. You scry 2 and draw a card as a sorcery. Now, these are clearly designed with limited in mind. They're a bit too overcosted for constructed. But the fact that they allow you to draft these colorless lessons early, and then no matter which colors you end up in, whichever learn cards you happen to get, you'll have lessons to fetch out of your sideboard. This feels like it becomes something that every limited deck has to have to keep up. Like, if you're doing anything in limited and it comes with draw a card tacked on, even though these are medium, they're like reasonable cards in limited. Like, commons are good in limited. So you just have these like commons and uncommons that you're playing that are like fine on their face, and then they also draw a card. Like drafting to be able to learn repeatedly, I think, is really going to be how you bury opponents in this format from like initial speculation here.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make drafting really interesting. I also like how the colorless lessons are all like introductory courses because, you know, they're colorless because everybody has to take them from all the colleges. That's really sweet.
Yeah, that is cool.
Sweet, like lore thing. That's pretty cool. I like it.
But yeah, you said there was one, like some of these learn cards that didn't jump out to you. There's one that's been spoiled, Professor of Symbology. It's just a 2-mana 2/1 creature that learns when it enters the battlefield.
Like, yeah, but like I mean, you know, from like there's no, it's just a 2/1 for 2. Like that, I think that for sure that card could be playable if there's like very good lessons.
But it's not just a 2/1 for 2. If it said 2/1 for 2 ETB draw a card, every white aggressive deck would play it.
Yeah.
And so as long as there's something worth getting out of your sideboard, that's what it becomes. Like the fact it's like card advantage and consistency out of your sideboard reminds me of what they tried to do with companions. Obviously, it's not as powerful. Well, I say obviously, but it seems like it won't be as powerful, but it's still like this extra source of consistency and card advantage that hasn't ever existed in the game before. Like we've had wishes before, but when you wished, like the card you cast got replaced by what you fetched. This is just being tacked on as extra to like of other effects.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how it ends up playing out. Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I'm trying to like think of how I want to finalize my thought here, but I think you covered it all. So we can just move to the next new mechanic, which is Magecraft. And Magecraft is a keyword that gives you a extra ability whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell. So, for example, I can read. Well, let's read one of the flashier Magecraft spells, which is Professor Onyx. 6-mana Planeswalker, costs 4 black, legendary Planeswalker Liliana, 5 starting loyalty. Static ability Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. I guess I'll read the whole card. But +1, you lose 1 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. -8, each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 2 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. So, Magecraft, get an extra effect whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell.
I really like Magecraft.
Yeah, I like it too. I think this ability has the biggest chance to show up in competitive constructive formats out of all of them in this set.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that like it will reward you, like we've seen spell type decks before, something like Sprite Dragon. Sprite Dragon basically has Magecraft. It just put a +1/+1 counter on it, and that card was close. We've seen similar sorts of decks that like, you know, play a creature and then a bunch of spells around it to protect it, and so Magecraft can be that type of payoff. It's not super snowbally, like you have to have Magecraft on a permanent, but then to trigger it, you need instants and sorceries. So it has this like tension and deck building that rewards you for sequencing and for, you know, actual deck construction. So it seems like a very good mechanic. It's the type of, seems like it'll be super fun to play with and potentially good.
Yeah, I believe this this ability is going to for sure see play in Legacy, as there's a 2-card kill combo with Chain of Smog. If you know that card.
Chain of Smog is like target player discards 2, and then they can copy Chain of Smog.
Yeah.
So if you target yourself, you can just keep copying it, which will trigger any Magecraft you have in play. And the one like on Professor Onyx, they lose 2 life. There's a 2-mana creature where they lose 1, you gain 1. So you can just copy it and pop off and kill them.
That would be Witherbloom Apprentice. Costs 2 mana, black-green, Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant and sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So could be some like Sultai-based Legacy deck that plays Apprentice and Chain of Smog for a Splinter Twin combo kill. I imagine people will try and make that work. It's relatively cheap. It's very cheap. Very cheap 2-card combo to kill. So I imagine that'll see legacy play for sure. But there definitely are a good amount of interesting Magecraft abilities that have been spoiled so far, and it's 100% like pushed enough on the cards that I've seen that I think it'll see some constructed play, especially like alongside adventure creatures, right? Because
that's true.
Like you have the instant and sorcery part of the adventure cards, but you also get the creature on the backhand plus some Magecraft ability. So it just like you're always going to have gas.
Yeah, it plays super well with adventure. I didn't even think of that. Huh.
Yeah. So I'm curious what people will come up with in regards to that. I think there will be pretty powerful stuff going on there. Definitely in standard, maybe even in historic. Who knows? Well,
yeah, I'm also interested in the fact that they specifically worded it cast or copy, which makes me wonder like how many spell copy effects are going to be running around in this format. And if there's a lot, I mean, I don't ever think we've seen a format that really focused a lot on just having a bunch of copy effects. There's been like the odd planeswalker here or there, or like the odd double cast card that's not playable. But if there are a bunch of copy type effects, then, you know, there'll be a lot of interaction on the stack. And that's my type of Magic. So if there's a bunch of counter spells and stuff flying around, people copying things, people countering things, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, like there's already a copy like infinite kill in historic, right? With the War of the Spark, Ralzeric, and then Expansion Explosion.
Yeah, that one takes some setup, but it's there.
I mean, it takes some setup, but I mean, there's enough Magecraft abilities that we've seen so far and enough copy spells that I think there might actually be something there in historic, right? It seems like that deck gains a lot more consistency, especially with some of the mystical archive cards that are being added to the set. But we'll get to those once we've run through the rest of these mechanics. The next mechanic in Strixhaven is Ward. And Ward, if anyone remembers Frost Titan, is basically just the Frost Titan ability tacked onto a keyword. So Ward reads, for example, I'll read Waterfall Aerialist. It's a 4-mana, 3/1 flyer. Creature Djinn Wizard, flying, Ward 2. Whenever this creature becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless that player plays 2. I haven't seen any cards that have a different Ward number than 2 out of what they've spoiled so far, so maybe it's Ward 2 on everything. I guess we'll see once we have the whole set, but basically just taxes spells or abilities that target the permanent with Ward.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a feel bad. This is something a friend of ours pointed out, that it isn't like you have to pay more to target it. It's that you can target it, and then there's a trigger, and then you have to pay. So if you forget about Ward, you're just going to get ranched. But yeah, interesting ability, makes things a bit more sticky, and kind of a nice foil to Magecraft, right? Like, Magecraft is rewarding all these instants and sorceries for being played and giving you all these extra bonuses. And Ward is the mechanic that's sort of defending against that. So I don't know how much it'll show up in Constructed. Probably only if there's some card that's also good for its other text. But in Limited, if someone's drafting, like, it's not going to all be spells decks all the time. If someone is very heavy into a Magecraft deck and you've drafted the Ward deck, they're going to have a hard time using all their cards. So it's a nice kind of counterbalance.
Yep. I definitely like this keyword. It's really cool. And then, I mean, it's listed as a mechanic we've seen before. Modal double face cards return in the new set. I asked Cam about this during our pre-show too, but well, I guess we can reiterate it. Do you think that we're just going to see modal double face cards in every set going forward?
Well, I thought that we wouldn't, but they keep printing them. I mean, so we knew that we were getting the rest of the pathways in Kaldheim, which meant that for printing reasons, I imagined they would have others as well. Why they're in this set, maybe they needed to round out full printing sheets of double-faced cards, so they added some, but they're adding quite a lot, so that seems maybe unlikely.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they got a deal. Maybe like it was a buy 10 print runs of double-faced cards, get the 11th free or something, and so the next few sets are going to have them, because with Innistrad coming up. Innistrad loves its double-faced cards, so maybe we'll just have them up until Innistrad, and then they'll be done. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. But that wraps up the mechanics for Strixhaven. I like all of them. The set seems really cool so far. There's a lot of powerful cards. But perhaps the most interesting thing to come with Strixhaven is the Mystical Archive cards. So these are Strixhaven's version of, I guess, masterpieces.
And masterpieces are invocations.
Yeah, masterpieces, invocations. But these cards appear way more frequently than masterpieces did in its respective set. So there's 63 cards. They're all instants and sorceries, and they all come into their own special Mystical Archive frame treatment. And they also come in a special Japanese-only frame treatment as well. And one of these cards will appear in every single draft booster and every single set booster in Strixhaven.
Even on Arena, which is wild to me.
Yeah, even on Arena, to keep the intended draft experience alive in both digital and paper. So these are all instants and sorceries from MTG's past that are considered, I guess, the most famous.
They're definitely iconic.
Yeah. And all of them have been upshifted in rarity from their original printings. For example, Day of Judgment appears at Mythic in the Mystical Archive. And you may be asking yourself, wait, if all 63 of these cards are going to be added with the on MTG Arena and draft boosters, what formats are they legal in? Well, they're not all legal in Standard. It says here that all of the uncommons that were printed in Mystical Archive are all uncommons that are currently in 2020, 2021 Standard. So all of those cards will already be in Standard, and they will rotate out at their original time, but appearing as Mystical Archive doesn't extend that card's time in Standard. For example, like Duress is supposed to rotate out in the fall, but it appears as a Mystical Archive card. So even though Strixhaven isn't rotating out in the fall, Duress is still going to rotate.
Makes sense.
But since these 63 cards are considered some of Magic's most iconic instants and sorceries, we have a few of them that are, I guess, very good. Some that come to mind.
Quite strong.
Swords to Plowshares, Counterspell, Dark Ritual, Demonic Tutor, Natural Order. So some of them are preemptively banned in Historic. All of the cards I just listed are preemptively banned. So those being, I'll list all of them that are preemptively banned. Swords to Plowshares, Counterspell, Dark Ritual, Demonic Tutor, Lightning Bolt, Channel, Natural Order.
Lightning Bolt, I feel like maybe would be fine, but the rest makes sense. Those are maybe a bit strong. The fact that more of these Mystical Archive cards aren't preemptively banned in Historic is what the wild part to me is. There are some crazy cards in here that are just going to, like, as I was alluding to earlier, wildly change Historic. Yeah,
this is 100% going to be the biggest shakeup Historic has ever seen. And I think it's good timing. It is actually perfect timing to talk about this because on our last episode, when we ran through the cards from the newest Historic anthology, I was ranting about how I was upset that they add all these cards to Historic that will actually just have no effect on the format at all. And I'd be much more excited if they actually paid a little bit more attention to the cards they were adding and added cards with the intention of seeing some kind of new archetype or be created, like spawn something new or prop up an archetype that is missing a few pieces. So we actually see the format shift in some way. And man,
one example we gave was like blue cantrips.
I ranted about Think Twice and how that card isn't good enough to empower, blue tempo decks or create a new archetype, and how it'd be much better to see something like Serum Visions or Preordain. And you joked about, oh yeah, maybe they'll just add Brainstorm. Ha ha ha. And lo and behold, Brainstorm, mystical archive card being added to Historic.
Brainstorm in Historic. So it's not going to be like the Brainstorm of Legacy because this card gets so much of its power from its interaction with fetch lands, but it also powers up fetch lands because of that interaction. So there's like Fabled Passage already sees play. Brainstorm is probably good enough that Evolving Wilds alongside it is fine. So any type of shuffle effect that you can combo with a Brainstorm just becomes incredibly powerful. So there's definitely going to be decks built around this.
Yeah. But to jump back quickly to the cards that are preemptively banned, you said that you think Lightning Bolt would have been fine. I think Lightning Bolt 100% would have been fine in this format. I also think Swords to Plowshares would have been probably fine. Like, white removal is just so bad. And I actually think Swords would be totally okay. And I wish it wasn't preemptively banned. I mean, the fact that it exists in Historic means that they could just unban it at any point to see what happens.
Swords, though, like early game, they play sort of a similar role, bolting and Swords, and sure, it's fine. But like, Swords has the potential to, I don't know, that card's just so much. Like your Jund Food opponent plays their, like they pay 5, they play their Corvold, Swords it for 1. Like it hits anything. I don't know. Bolt at least has some restrictions on it inherently built in.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think it might be fine, and I'd like to see what happens if they just let it get played in the format for a little bit. I mean,
also, but they just added Death Shadow, which I imagine they hoped would see some play, and you can't have people with multiple Death Shadows in play getting Swords. That's just isn't going to work.
That hurts. That hurts for sure. But yeah, Lightning Bolt, Swords. I would like to see those cards in Historic, but we don't get them for now. But some bangers that are being added. We already talked about Brainstorm. Mind's Desire, currently banned in Legacy, getting added to Historic. This card is terrifying. So I don't know if it's too expensive or whatever, but I think there's just nothing good that's going to happen with this card existing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cards that is either you have the enablers that push it so over the top that it has to be banned, like Legacy, or you don't have the enablers and it's like a 6 mana, I don't know, draw 2 or 3, maybe. I guess the cast for free makes it stronger than a draw, but it's not even just a 6 mana, like, you need so much more mana in order to get more out of it, and those types of rituals just aren't in Historic. So I don't know. But it comes alongside with Grape Shot and Tendrils of Agony, 2 other Storm payoff cards. So Storm as a mechanic, you might not be surprised to learn, is pretty high on the Storm scale of things that they are not going to reprint.
Yeah, well said.
And now they're reprinting it into a format that a lot of us thought they were intending to make like extended, bigger standard, a bit more powerful standard, which they've now just sort of mixed into half Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, like, we already have decks that exist in Historic that can infinitely loop Mox Ambers relatively easily.
Oh, that's true.
So I'm not going to be surprised at all if there's a Storm deck that comes out of this set that's actively very good.
Yeah, Paradox Engine Storm. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
There's
100% something there. They spoiled a new card today, actually, that can go infinite with Bergi, God of Storytelling. I don't know if you've seen this card.
I didn't.
Grinning Ingus. It's a 3 mana 2/2 in red, cost 1 red and 2 generic. Creature elemental. It has an activated ability for 1 red mana. Return Grinning Ingus to its owner's hand. Add colorless red. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So if you have a Bergi God of Storytelling in play, it's a creature that reads whenever you cast a spell, add 1 red mana. So you can, if you have this in play with a Burgie and 1 red mana, you can tap your 1 red mana, return this to play, add your 3, cast it again for free, added another red mana, and then just loop that for as many times as you want. Obviously, that's infinite storm, right? So if you have 2 extra mana floating around, then you could grape shot your opponent, kill them. So that's something worth looking at. Both these cards cost 3 mana, of course, Grinning Angus and Burgie God of Storytelling. So that's not a small mana investment. They're pretty fragile creatures. So obviously they're open to removal, but like 2-card infinite storm is not something to be ignored for sure. Other bangers from Mystical Archives, though. Faithless Looting.
Too strong for Modern.
Faithless Looting. Too strong for Modern. I'm super stoked to try out an Arclight Phoenix deck with Faithless Looting, Brainstorm.
Like Isn't that what got it axed from Modern?
Yes.
It was Arclight Phoenix, right? Like what?
Yeah.
What is happening here?
I don't know, but there's a lot of really cool stuff happening here for sure. I mean, what else do we have?
Unburial Rites is in this format.
Yeah.
You're giving people Faithless Looting.
Lightning Helix. That's a great burn spell. We've got Sign in Blood. This card's going to see a ton of play, I imagine. I think this card might actually make Death Shadow good.
Yeah, Sign in Blood is nuts.
Inquisition of Kozilek. Now we
have Thoughtseize and Inquisition for our black mid-range decks.
I mean, black was already insanely good. Inquisition just pushes it that much more. What else do we have here? Oh, man,
format's becoming such a weird mix of old. It's so strange.
Yeah, I don't know that like I said on last episode, I'd much rather see them add cards that are actually going to shake up the format, and they 100% nailed that.
Stone Rain's here if you like pounding lands.
Yeah. So be ready for the biggest historic shakeup ever when Strixhaven is released on MTG Arena. There's also a card in here from Modern Horizons 2 that they pre-printed into the set. I don't know if you've read this one. Abundant Harvest. Costs 1 green, sorcery. Choose land or non-land. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is actually like a very good green cantrip, right? Like this seems awesome. This card seems really good.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a very interesting effect. Because a lot of time, when especially early in the game, if you cast a cantrip that say traditionally has Scry 1 on it, that's basically the choice you're making anyway. Is do I want a land or a non-land?
Yeah, I like that early game. If you're land light, you can guarantee that this gets you a land, no matter how deep it is. If you're later in the game and you don't want to draw land, you just need more gas. I can't guarantee the spell you hit is gas, but I mean, it's better than the 3 lands that were on top of your deck, right?
Yeah, just don't put bad cards in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, this card actually seems great to me.
There's other just like classic Modern and Legacy sideboard cards that are getting added. Krosan Grip.
Yep.
Split Second is a strange mechanic. You just can't interact. It's the precursor to Teferi 3. So that's huge. Electrolyze.
Yep.
Very common sideboard card in Modern. Really going to hate on things like Young Pyromancer decks that were maybe running around or other things.
Time Warp's an interesting addition too. Like this card sees play in Modern. I mean, this is...
And the Taken Terms deck?
Yeah. This could be like incredibly good in Historic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm like more excited for like I haven't been playing much Magic since Kaldheim came out, but I'm way more excited for this set than any set that's come out over the past couple of years for this reason exactly. Only
Historic is going to be insane.
Yeah, like not only are we going to have a big standard shakeup, but Historic is just going to get completely turned on its head, which is really cool.
Man, so many people are going to have to learn how to brainstorm. This is something that Adam's talked about in the past and that I'd heard Legacy players talk about, but that they could tell when someone was new to Legacy because they would brainstorm at the wrong time. And I don't know what the right time is, but I presume I'm going to find out.
Couldn't tell you, but
I'm also new to Legacy.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. They revealed an Is It colored mythic today that I'm sure you might be excited about, being a Torrential Gearhulk plan, but this is Magma Opus, costs 6 red blue, so 8 mana total, instant. Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, draw 2 cards, and you can discard it from your hand for 2 Is It hybrid mana and create a treasure token. So early game, if you draw this, you can turn it into a treasure to ramp yourself into future copies, or ramp yourself into the Torrential Gearhulk you're playing to flash this back.
Yeah, that seems nuts.
That seems really good. I like this card a lot. Can tap lands too. It can tap lands.
I can Torrential Gearhulk back my brainstorms.
Oh man, yeah. There's a lot of cool cards in this set. I'm super excited. We'll be playing in the early access event, which is in a couple weeks, actually. Holy crap.
Are we going to be playing
2
standard
weeks.
decks, or are we just going to be playing wild new historic?
I don't even know. We could do whatever we want.
That's true. We could do both.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Wow.
That's fast.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm excited.
I'm just still trying to wrap my head around, like, Mind's Desire, fine and historic, too strong for Legacy, but swords, other way around.
Yeah, I can't really speak to the decision making here, but I'm excited regardless.
They just added that Merit Lage card. How am I supposed to stop Merit Lage if I don't have Swords to Plowshare?
Yeah.
What am I just going to storm off when they make a 2020? Maybe.
All right, well, I think that actually wraps up our discussion today. We don't have anything else to talk about, do we?
No, that was all the news.
All right.
Mystic Archive being the big one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're in the thick of Strixhaven spoilers. We sort of had our red-white day. I assume over the next coming days, probably by the time you listen to this, a few of the other colleges will have had their spoilers out. Full spoiler will be, soon, right? If early access is in 2 weeks, full spoiler is probably going to be done in about a week or so.
Yeah, I imagine
time for a spoiler episode.
I imagine we'll have full spoiler by the end of next week at this rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because early access event is the 14th and then release on Arena is the 16th. So, yeah.
Oh, it's 2 days early?
Yeah. Or is it? Let me look.
Wouldn't it be... Yeah, 14th is the Wednesday. Would it release on the 15th?
Oh, it releases on the 15th. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I've got the old paper release schedule stuck in my mind that sets always release on a Friday. Yeah, so we'll have early access on the 14th on the Wednesday. And then if it follows regular preview schedule, we'll have the full spoiler out the week before. So that means next week is going to be our top 10 episode.
Cool. The release is essentially on the Friday on Arena once they get it to stop crashing on Thursday.
Are we going to have to do 2 different top 10s? One for cards from the Mystical Archive and one for Strixhaven cards?
We could do a top 10 and a top 5 because there's only half as many Mystical Archive.
That's true. Yeah, that's probably a better idea. I like that idea. Yeah, so stay tuned next week.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Top 10 episode. I love doing those. All right. On that note, let's wrap things up. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. You can find all content from the DWC on our website, dwc.gg. And however you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Everything helps, keeps this thing growing, bringing to new listeners. Thanks for listening. Catch you all next week.
And if you like some of the Dean cards from Strixhaven, make sure you give him a positive review on Rate My Prof.